anybody that's been through Marine Corps boot camp knows in the beginning there's not a lot. They like to tell you that it's the easiest time that you'll ever have in your life because you don't have to think about anything. You don't have to think about when you eat, when you brush your teeth, what body part you're going to wash, what you're going to wear. You don't think about anything. They tell you what to do, when to do it. But then as they go along, it's so intentional about then connecting you to the team, connecting you not then to the team, but to the Marine Corps, to the mission, right? So it's not about you necessarily. It's always about the team, right? Like you can't just be thinking about yourself. You have to make decisions based on the team and what's going to be for the greater good of the team. And that's reinforced from a very early stage, and I've seen it play out, and I've seen the benefit of the team, and I've seen teams, I've seen the power of teams in that world, and that it's one thing to create in an environment like the Marine Corps. Obviously, you're not going to replicate that in a sales team, nor I think you probably want to, but there's elements of that, right, that you can take and you can put into place and intentionally build that culture around team and company and doing what's good for each other.
Hi, friends. Welcome to the Sales Enablement Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Paul. Now, that was Tim Mann. Tim is Director of Sales at Blueboard, and we're proud to have Blueboard as one of the sponsors here on the Sales Enablement Podcast. And in today's conversation, Tim and I talk about his fascinating as well as unconventional path to a career in sales. I mean, Tim at one point was a member of the U.S. Marines, tactical, chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosive incidents response force. And he shares a story about having to respond in one of those instances, which is really interesting. Tim has also worked for a nonprofit that used running as a way to form and empower a community, resulting in self-sufficiency within homeless and underserved populations. So it was really interesting to me as I spoke with Tim is how all these diverse experiences prior to getting into sales have proven valuable in shaping how Tim sells and how he manages sellers in a fast-growing startup. So we get into this and much, much more. But before we get to Tim, I want to remind you to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. So let's jump into it. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Andy. Super excited to be here. I've been a fan for a long time.
Oh, well, that's very nice of you to say. Thank you. My guests don't often say that. I'll have you come back more often. Stroke my ego. I like that.
That's all it takes.
Yeah, that's all it takes. Yeah, very. So, yeah. Well, so tell us about, now that we got that out of the way, tell us about you and the work that you do.
Yeah. So I am the director of sales at Blueboard. Blueboard is a reward and recognition company that focuses exclusively on experiential rewards. So instead of the traditional like cash, gift cards, points, things like that, we are sending people out skydiving, sending them on trips, sending them to nice dinners with their family, you name it, different things for different types of people, but all personalized to them with a personal concierge to do that. So I'm leading the mid-market team here at Blueboard doing that.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, Blueboard is a valued sponsor of this program. And yeah, I mean, this idea that you, on one example, is just like, yeah, enough of President's Club, right? I mean, who, as I wrote about, who wants to see the boss in their bikini or in their Speedo, right? It's like, yeah, hanging by the pools. You'd like to do something more customized, personalized, more meaningful to you as an individual. And yeah, this gives management a way to sort of reward people with these very tailored experiences. And I think experiences is sort of the key word, because certainly all the research says is that all of us really are looking for more experiences.
Yeah. And especially now, right? Like I just feel like we constantly hear more than ever, people just trying to get out there and do things and, doing things for the first time again, often like first time in a long time, going on this trip, going to this place to see this thing. So there's a lot of just like getting back out there that we're seeing people really excited about.
Well, that's true. Yeah, in the context of the pandemic, people are feeling a little more at ease. Well, barring the BA.5, which seems to be causing a little bit of havoc right now. But in general, people feel more comfortable getting out and doing things they didn't do the last couple of years.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, you had a very, I'd call it, circuitous route into sales and selling. And I always like when people have such fascinating backgrounds, I always like to talk about is, I mean, you started your work career in the Marines and saying you're a member of this, like, there must be an acronym there somewhere, but a chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosive incidents response team. So that caught my eye. So tell us about that. What can you tell us about that? And did you ever have to respond to a chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, or explosive incident?
Yeah. So a couple things. Circuitous is one of the nicest words I've heard used to describe my experience. So I appreciate that. And there is an acronym for it. It's CBIRF. So yeah, I definitely had I don't know if there's a lot of traditional paths to sales, but maybe more of a non-traditional path. So yeah. I joined the Marine Corps a few months after September 11th in 2002, and then was stationed at the Chemical Biological Incidents Response Force right outside of Washington, D.C. So it was at a time of like heightened security in the country around attacks and nuclear attacks and everything else. So we were trained to respond to any type of attacks within the United States and potentially abroad. So luckily for us, there weren't a lot of attacks in the U.S. at that time, but there was the ricin incident at the Capitol that we responded to.
Oh, right, right.
So yeah, we did show up to that, and
well, so when you get a call like that, and somebody says, "Hey, potential." I guess it's biological attack. I mean, what do you do?
Yeah. Well, back then we were on call we'd go through shifts of being on call for 24 hours at a time. So you're on an incident response force and the pager would go off. Pager. We had pagers back then. The pager would go off and you'd respond, and you know, it's interesting looking back on it. Like I was, 19, 20, 21, 22 at the time. Right. And it wasn't like, panic and like, there's an attack. It was just kind of like, all right, like now we got to do the thing that we were trained to do, type of thing. So it's just like, kind of young and dumb. I don't think you think about it often as much in those type of scenarios as I would now. Yeah.
And so were you guys doing like remediation or?
Yeah. So we're going into look through everything in the Capitol for ricin, and like go through the mail, pick everything up, like clear the building, and yeah, just make sure the building was safe for people to return.
Wow. Okay. Well, that had to have been a little exciting. So, you moved from there into nonprofits. You worked one with prisoner reentry, which is very admirable. Are you familiar with Strively?
Yeah, very familiar. I connected with the founder of that the other month when I came across it. So yeah, I'd like to do some work with them at some point.
Yeah, so Kate's been on the show a couple times, including bringing one of her graduates. And people haven't heard any of the episodes with Kate Leidy. She has this organization, Strively, which trains recently incarcerated people to become SDRs, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah.
So what was the program you worked with?
Yeah, so there's a couple in the nonprofit space. So coming out of the Marine Corps, I was looking to give back, looking to do work, do meaningful work, give back to the community. I was somebody that had a lot of second, third, fourth, fifth, 20th chances in my life. So I wanted to help provide other people that opportunity.
Right.
And be part of that. So my first job out of college after the Marine Corps, I was deployed overseas, came back, moved to New York City, went to college in Brooklyn. And my first job was as a discharge planner at Rikers Island, the New York City jail. So helping
Wow.
inmates plan for their release.
Right.
So I ran a gang involved dorm. So individuals that were gang involved and wanted to be part of a program. So we would run CBT groups. I'd
Hmm.
go in there, I'd do like weekly one-on-ones with them, help them plan. What are they going to do when they get out? What are the jobs? What are the resources? I'd go down every morning and give the pitch to inmates that were coming in about, our program and why they should, why they may want to take advantage of a
Right.
program like that. Man, was that an eye-opening experience.
Yeah. I mean, so for people who aren't from New York City or maybe just hear it on cop shows, tell people what Rikers Island is.
Yeah, Rikers Island is the New York City jail, infamous or famous, I guess, depending on how you hear about it. But you'll often see it depicted in a lot of shows and
It's
movies.
this big, massive facility. I mean, I lived part of the time in New York City, and there's
Yeah,
conversation about relocating, closing, relocating
yeah,
Rikers.
yeah,
Yeah, probably a good idea.
yeah, yeah.
But and then interesting after that, you were talking about you worked with a nonprofit that was sort of based on running. This I
Yeah.
thought was very interesting. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so after that, I after the Marine Corps, I very much got into running, and just continued down that path. And then I found an organization that combined those two things that I was super passionate about. One, like helping provide people opportunity,
Right.
and then two, running. So this organization partnered with homeless shelters, substance abuse programs, prison reentry programs. And we'd set up running teams at 5:30 in the morning, 3 days a week. We'd bring in volunteers from the community to meet up with those individuals that were living at those residences,
Hmm.
and we'd run together. And it was all about creating community, learning from each other, and holding each other accountable to what we said we were going to do.
Which I would think part of that is just showing up, right?
And that's the thing, right? Especially when you're in a shelter, when you're in these programs, and you're doing all the right. There's a lot going on. It's not. There's a lot of competing priorities, and as I went out and built these relationships, I would have to go into these programs. I'll never forget at the one a reentry program. So most of the people coming out of long term incarceration, and we were sitting at a long table, and I had to explain the program, and I was trying to get them to join the program.
Hmm.
And the looks of disbelief when I was like, "We're gonna run 3 days a week at 5:30 in the morning," they're like, "The hell we are!" Like, I don't think so, buddy. But it was so interesting to see. One that people actually took us up on it to go into these programs
Right.
and talk about this program, and then to see people start showing up. And maybe in the beginning it was for different reasons, but then in the end, seeing that people want to be part of something, volunteers and those that were in the program, right? Like, so many volunteers I think showed up to that program thinking that they were going to like help other people,
Right.
and it was almost always the reverse. I saw it every day. I learned so much every day, and the
Right.
volunteers I walked away with like, man, like I never expected that.
Yeah, because it seems like in that environment, it's not just about community, but there's obviously confidence that comes from that, and confidence that stems from holding themselves accountable
Yeah,
and achieving some degree of whatever they were trying to accomplish with the running.
and that was exactly it. I'll never forget one gentleman I was working with that had done maybe 35 years in prison, recently released, and one of the nicest guys, which sounds odd to say, right? Like, you don't
Yeah.
typically think 35 years in prison, you probably didn't do something nice to get in there. But super dedicated and committed. And one day we were just sitting there talking, and he was just like, I just want people to see me for who I am now, and I just want to be like in the community. I want to like have the confidence, to your point, of like be out there and do different things, and feel part of something. So yeah, super rewarding experience.
So I mean, I read that you'd had a coaching certification from USA Track and Field. Was that having to do with the running program?
No, that was just something, being a runner, just trying to learn all of the things about running that I couldn't. I hear you say something about running and swimming yourself?
Yeah. No, getting back into running. I for a long time I was on this routine of, well, I've run my entire life. I did track and field and cross country in high school, and always sort of run for fitness purposes. Then I don't know, about 10 years ago, started running half marathons. Trying to do like at least one a year. I was running with my sister, and unfortunately, it sort of got interrupted by the pandemic. But I've got eye on the San Diego half marathon next March. Nope, you still there?
Yep, I got you.
Okay. Next March, San Diego half marathon.
Very nice. That's a good one. I did that one a few years back. It's a tough one toward the end there.
Oh yeah, with the big hill on mile 11. Yeah, coming up Washington Street. Yeah,
I remember it well.
Yeah. That's one of those hills you look at and think this would be a lot more fun to run down than run up.
Yes,
I've gone down on my bicycle, and I've gone up on my bicycle. Not really easy on my bike either. So anyway.
No.
Yes, I do some of that. But why it's just interesting about the USA Track and Fields, because World Track and Field Championships are starting in Eugene today as we record this. But also, I had Brian Smith on my show as the CEO of Leon, which is sort of a wellness-oriented app as well. And he had spent, 5 years, I think, as a sports scientist with USA Track and Field. And
very cool.
Yeah, well, it brought this idea of, what he learned about performance psychology to sales, and this so many things that he learned that and I make this comment all the time, but there's level of science and professionalism from professional sports that we could bring into sales, that in terms of how do you coach performance, for instance, that's just missing.
Well, yeah. And that was, it's being a runner and spending so much time in nonprofit as the years went on, then similar type of path in some ways that I ended up getting a master's degree in sport and performance psychology for that same reason, right? I entered that program not because I wanted to work with athletes, but because I wanted to dig deeper into myself on how I can continue to get better and how I can help other people continue to get better and open doors. And it really is, it's transferable, right? You see it in sports all the time. Everybody has a mindset coach now. Right. Sports, I in my last organization, which was a coaching platform using sports psychology, one of the coaches would always say, sales is baseball, right? You miss a lot more than you hit.
Oh, yeah. See, I hate that analogy, but because unfortunately it's true for many sales organizations. But you'll get me on my soapbox about win rates and how pathetically low they are in so many industries and why they could be so much better. That's because I know that comes up. But I think in sports it is very relevant in terms of how you look at the whole person, right? Professional sports, golfers, for instance, we'll call them individual contributors, if you will. They have a team, though, right? They've got their sports psychologists, and they've got their nutritionist and their fitness coach, and there's so much more of that we could apply in sales. Just making access available to psychologists, right? To help people work through issues. We know stress is such a big problem in sales, and become sort of amplified during the pandemic. Again, one of my things I got a rant about is how many salespeople do you need in an organization to justify the cost of a staff psychiatrist or psychologist, staff therapist that people could talk to and to work issues through.
100%. And it is, it's such an important thing, right? Like as I even, think back to teams I've been on and, you know, large numbers, but you're dealing with family things, you're dealing with personal things, you're dealing with, right. And you still have these big goals and you're trying to balance a lot. And then there's a lot of pressure, and there's pressure in your personal life. There's pressure in all areas of your life. And with revenue numbers always going up, the pressure is never waning.
No. And yeah, more so in sales than almost any other professions. You can't hide. Right. I mean, when things are bad, I mean, there's no coasting. Yeah, you have to go out and engage every day. And yeah, it just seems so short-sighted. And so many senior leaders in companies that just don't get this. It's like, yeah, sales is, I think, underinvested in, even though people would say, oh, look at our SG&A numbers. We're spending all this on sales. It's like, yeah, spend it differently. Right? I would rather have one fewer sales. If I had a large sales team, I'd rather have one or two fewer salespeople and have the type of support professionals like a therapist on staff or a professional coach, performance coach, right? Instead of having some frontline sales manager with no experience trying to coach their sellers, is have actual coaches on staff.
Yeah. 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 And it's something you see, I know you've talked about it in the past as well, right? In that not a lot of training generally for managers, right? So much of the resources go to individual contributors, and the managers can often be the I don't necessarily want to say the linchpin, right? But really kind of setting the tone and the culture, and can really, have that make or break on a team if they're not setting the right tone and aren't able to support their people in the right way. So,
yeah, no, I it is sort of ironic that, here's the individuals that research shows have the single biggest impact on salespeople, which is their immediate manager. And yeah, we underinvest in them to such a great degree in these very fundamental things, which is teaching people how to coach, how to manage performance, and give them just a better baseline of knowledge. But I do think that maybe a better answer long-term is maybe we expect less of frontline managers as coaches and hire coaches.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. It's a great call out. Like, how do you, what's the answer there? Is it to expect every frontline manager to be an amazing coach or provide additional resources? It's an interesting thought.
Yeah. Have managers manage the things, right? The process and the data. That's what they're all being sort of forced to focus on anyway. And then, yeah, bring coaches in. Again, I think if you, we look at the stats that show, low quota attainment and all these other things we're all sort of tired of talking about. It's like, well, let's start trying to fix it as maybe we don't need as many salespeople if the salespeople we have can perform at higher levels. So what's the key to that? It's not, oh, we're going to go find these superstars. It's no, we're going to help these people grow to be really good at what they do. And we do that by giving them the right type of support.
Yeah. Agreed. Like the right type of support all the way around, right? From the coaching to, the things like your book, right? Like teaching people how to sell with a little bit more heart.
Yeah.
Coming from, my background in nonprofit work, right? Like I never wanted to be in sales. Hated the idea of sales. I thought it was like a disgusting profession coming from the nonprofit world. I only wanted to help people.
Yeah.
I just didn't know anything about it, right? And I didn't realize that in nonprofit, right? Like I was trying to get people to sign up for the program. I was trying to show people opportunity. I was trying to get people to see things from a different perspective and influence. And then realize like that's actually what I'd been doing all along. And once I took that approach to sales, it really just it completely changed my outlook on all of that, right? It's all about helping people find opportunity. It's not about persuading people about anything, just like I wasn't doing in nonprofit work. I wasn't trying to convince anybody to live a different life. I was talking through what's important to them and, how do we get it?
Absolutely. Gosh, I should have interviewed you before I wrote the book. But that is the message, right? I mean, that's our job as salespeople, is to understand what's most important to the people we're trying to help, and then help them get those things that are important to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Different mindset. Well, maybe the answer is running programs. I think we should mandatory sales
team
teams. That's right.
mandatory sales. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if my team is ready to get up at 5:30 in the morning and go running. I think I might get some sideways looks from that.
Yeah, well, the thing is, they'd all have to stream it on their phones or make sure they're doing it. But yeah, since we're all remote these days.
Yeah.
Well, another thing that's interesting in your background that is looking through it was that you did some training in CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. Do you use that at all in managing your sellers and your team?
To me, it's all kind of laid the foundation, right? Like all of that work I was doing it in the jail and in nonprofit was CBT based, like helping people form better habits, exploring why they think things and how they think about things. And again, not like telling people what to think, but just having people think a few layers deeper about maybe why they have those thoughts
Right.
and why they do those things.
Right.
And, combine that and then later on kind of getting a master's degree in sport and performance psychology. It's kind of like, it's all connected, right? It's just like, how do you understand it? But then you got to do it consistently.
Right.
No matter what's going on in your life, you still got to show up, right? Like I have kids, I still got to show up. I have a revenue number, I still got to show up. I still got to do it. And you can do it once, that's great. But can you do it twice? Can you do it 3 times? Can you do it quarter after quarter after quarter after quarter after quarter? That's where all of those things kind of come together and that mindset piece really come into play. So it's definitely something I try to bring not just to the team, but to myself. I'm always working on it. I know a lot of the things I'm supposed to do, but like to do it yourself is often one of the biggest challenges.
Well, it is, right? I mean, and as usual, it's just quarter after quarter, we're also, doing it as a dad and as a partner to your wife and so on. I mean, it's all sort of connected.
Yeah.
I mean,
Very.
Yeah. I mean, you're not separate people just because you're going off and doing work or so on. So that, it's always a topic that fascinates me in terms of how you build or how you change habits, right?
Yeah.
Among sellers. And what's sort of been the things you found that are most effective in that regard?
Yeah, it's hard. I think as we think about kind of changing habits, it's about taking this mindset, like, that you're open first to changing your habits. Like it has to start from a place of openness. Like I'm open to getting better. And as I think about teams, this idea of just continuous improvement and not getting complacent and just like, there's always more to learn. There has to be a hunger to learn, start. But then we also have to understand, just like in discovery, right? Like why it's potentially important for this person to change. What are they trying to do? What do they care about? Why would they want to get better? Why would they want to change it? Yeah, maybe they'll bring in more revenue, but is that what matters to them? I mean, it should to a certain degree, but what are the other drivers, right? You got to understand these different pieces. And then when you can, it's about consistency, I think, in feedback. And as you see those behaviors that maybe aren't changing, you continue to not only just say, do this, but also explain why, and why this is a better way, why this is potentially another way to look at it. Like, and understanding how they're thinking about it, like help me understand like how you're approaching this and having a conversation so that we can really get to the root of it. And then when you see the behaviors start to change, because it will be inconsistent to start, right? It won't be every time. Maybe it'll be 1 out of 5 times to start. But then you have to start reinforcing that, just positive reinforcement, going into Gong, being like, I saw that. I know you've been working on that. And I see that, like, awesome job doing that. And then incentivizing against it when you can as well, whether that's on a monthly or quarterly basis, right? They just need the one-to-one reinforcement, but then also across the team, how are you reinforcing it through incentives, through talking, and calling people out on calls to be like, hey, here's a call, like here's a great way this person answered this question, here's a great way this person did this, to build those habits across the team. So now you're not just doing it in a vacuum with one person, but you're taking all the best practices that everybody has across the team and getting it to as many people as you can.
Yeah. So I mean, in following up on that is so what in your mind, what sort of listening and go through that explanation. So in your mind, what constitutes a healthy sales culture?
Healthy sales culture. Yeah, that's seems like it's hard to find at times as you talk to so many sellers, which is a sad thing. But as I look at our team and what we've tried to create
Mm-hmm.
and continue to try to create is healthy competition. And sellers, like, what's a border on healthy competition? That could be a fine line,
Mm-hmm.
right? Some people take it too far, some people care a lot more, some people care a lot less, but there has to be some element of healthy competition. Nobody wants to be the bottom, but you shouldn't be stepping over each other to get to the top. So that's where healthy competition, intentional culture building, and really kind of setting the stage that we don't win alone and we don't lose
Right.
alone is very important to me. And it's one of the most important things that I talk about in interviews. Like, if you want to be part of a team, like, it's not just about you hitting your number. Like, are you also helping make other people on the team better?
Right.
Those are the types of people that I want. And that has to be reinforced. That has to be highlighted. That has to be talked about. That expectation needs to be set from the beginning. So healthy competition, intentional culture building, coaching people. There has to be consistent coaching, like we've been talking about,
Mm-hmm.
talking through, like, what do you care about? How do you think about things? Let's think, what if we thought about it this way? How do you think about it if we think about it? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Just having those conversations. And creating a culture where people feel like they can have those conversations with you and not feel that it's coming from a place of
Command and control.
yeah, exactly. Right. Like, it's again, but that goes back to that team element. And that's something that I've always taken with me from the Marines, right? And that you can get through anything, right? You can live in a tent with 20 guys in Baghdad and still find ways to laugh, find ways to encourage each other, find ways to, right? Like, you can, it's the team,
Yeah.
it's the people that help you get through all of that. And if you're not building that on your team, then I think you're setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah. Well, and also I always remember this part in one of Charles Duhigg's books. I think is Better, Faster, Stronger. I forget the exact title, but the one he wrote after The Power of Habit. And he was talking about, he had interviewed the commandant of the Marine Corps, and we're talking about in their training is how they train the individual soldier at the lowest level to think for themselves, to make good decisions about what they do, right? That's not just this command and control, but yeah, you're a living, breathing part of this team, and it's not just a matter of marching in lockstep as you're going to have decisions to make about that could have impact on the people around you, and the things you're doing is encouraging that I don't know, that mindfulness, I guess I would say. I just wondered, was that reflected in the way you were trained as well?
So throughout it, right? Well, anybody that's been through Marine Corps boot camp knows in the beginning there's not a lot. They like to tell you that it's the easiest time that you'll ever have in your life, because you don't have to think about
Right.
anything. You don't have to think about when you eat, when you brush your teeth, what body part you're going to wash, what you're going to wear. You don't think about anything. They tell you what to do, when to do it. But then as they go along, it's so intentional about then connecting you to the team, connecting you not then to the team, but to the Marine
Right.
Corps, to the mission, right. So it's not about you necessarily. It's always about the team, right? Like, you can't just be thinking about yourself. You have to make decisions based on the
Mm-hmm.
team and what's going to be for the greater good of the team, and that's reinforced from a very early stage. And I've seen it play out, and I've seen the benefit of the team, and I've seen teams. I've seen the power of teams in that world, and that it's one thing to create in an environment like like the Marine Corps. Obviously, you're not going to replicate that
Mm-hmm.
in a sales team, nor I think you probably want to. But there's elements of
Yeah.
that, right? That you can take and you can put into place and intentionally build that culture around team and company and doing what's good for each other.
Yeah. Well, I always hark back to sort of military history buff and been reading oral histories of like the invasion of Normandy in World War II, and they always talk about sort of the hallmark of American soldiers compared to other countries perhaps was that when perhaps they got separated from the commander or their immediate leader, that they're able to think for themselves
Yeah.
and encouraged to say, okay, to your point, yeah, what can I do right now that's in the best interest of my team and to
Yeah.
help my team move forward? And I think we need more elements of that in our training as well.
Yeah, and it gets harder as the sales team grows, I'm sure, and you can feel, I've only been in smaller type of smart startup organizations. As you get to very large enterprise organizations, probably a little harder. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
reps can feel like a cog in the wheel. So I think even in those, it's about it being even more
Right.
intentional. How does their work really matter, and who are they connected to? They can't just be connected to the organization as an idea, right? Like there has to be some connection through the organization about that ties them to it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, what's it all for?
Yeah. Well, I think it gets to this idea of, I think from a hiring standpoint, is that you're hiring for a team. I think so many managers
Yeah.
look at it, well, I'm hiring individuals to be part of the team, but they don't give a little thought about, well, how do all these pieces fit together? Even salespeople, I don't want my salespeople all to be the same. I
Yeah.
know I need a mix of of personalities and a mix of skills and talents, because together that mix is going to be more powerful than if I got six people who are just same background, same skills as everybody has the others.
And that's exactly it, right? You're building a team, and on a team you need different types of voices, different types of background, different types of people in order to really make sure you have the best team.
Yeah.
Because there isn't just one best profile, one best person that you can replicate.
Yeah. All right. So, question back on Blueboard, because as I said that I've used Blueboard. Have you had a chance to use it?
I
And
have.
what was your experience that you?
It was. I would harken back to my first Blueboard reward that I got, which we use as part of our onboarding process as well. So using it for sales incentives, using it as part of our onboarding, we use it for anniversaries, we use it for a lot of different use cases. But it was before I started at the company I received it. So I accepted the job, got a call from, VP of sales, founder called me, congratulated me. Everybody started reaching out to me on LinkedIn. It was just like, oh shit, like this is cool. Like, people are excited. I'm excited. And then I got an email saying, congratulations, like super excited to have you, like use this reward, on us. And I was like, man, this is the way to come into a company. So going through the menu, I sat down and I mentioned a wife and two little boys. Sat down on the couch and started looking through options. Not gonna lie, I saw a massage, I saw some relaxation. All that looked really good to me.
In home.
But then, yes. But then as I went through it, then I found a year membership to the San Diego Children's Museum. And I was just like, man, that's something we talked about doing. We hadn't been down there yet. And it's not that it was like a ton of money to do, but it's just one of those things that I wasn't like, I don't know, like it's just didn't do it. What wasn't going to do it just for myself. And then I saw it there. I was like, man, that's perfect. So chose it. Concierge reached out to me again. This is all before I started. Congratulated me on the job. booked my experience. And it's so funny that you asked about it, because just like 2 days ago, it must have been the anniversary of when I went, or when I had the pictures on my phone, but they all came up on my phone. And it was a couple of years back, so my boys were a little smaller, but it was me, my wife, and my boys running around there, just having a good time. It was just such like a memorable experience, and still got the pictures popping up every year on the anniversary when it happened. Right, Facebook is great about sharing those memories and reminding you of the time. But it was just like such a cool thing to be able to do it with my family, because now it wasn't just like me starting this new job. It was also like now my whole family is just like, oh, like Tim's company gave him this, Blue Board gave him this. So yeah, it was just like such a cool experience, and something my kids still talk about.
Excellent. Yeah, I did Beer of the Month Club. My kids are much older, so it was all about me. So
you indulged in a passion on that one.
Well, I tried to do the taco tour of San Diego, but they weren't offering at the time. So the Beer of the Month was second choice. But yeah. All right. Well, Tim, thank you for joining me. It's been a pleasure to have you here. And if people want to connect with you and learn more about Blue Board, what's the best way to do that?
Yep, you can find me on LinkedIn, Tim Mann. You can also shoot me a note at tim.mann@blueboard.com.
Yeah, two N's on Mann.
Two N's, yeah. Thank you for clarifying.
So, all right, Tim, have a great weekend.
Awesome.
Talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
Bye. Okay, friends, that's it for this episode. First of all, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen. As always, I'm so grateful for your support of this show. And I want to thank my guest, Tim Mann, for sharing his insights with us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to this podcast, Sales Enablement with Andy Paul, on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. So thank you for that. And thank you so much for investing your time with me today. Until next time, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone.